Dust hangs thick in the air of the forgotten archive, where the flicker of a single oil lamp casts long, twisting shapes against the stone walls. The protagonist, let's call them Doctor. Elias Vane, a linguist with a reputation for deciphering the undecipherable, runs their fingers over an ancient box, its surface carved with serpentine patterns that seem to shift under the light. A local myth warned against disturbing this relic spoke of a tongue that speaks lies into life. But Elias had dismissed it as superstition. Now, as the lock clicks open, the air grows heavy, as if something unseen has leaned in to watch. Inside rests a dried, forked tongue, blackened with age, yet unnervingly preserved. The moment Elias touches it, a jolt of cold races up their arm, and somewhere, far off, a hiss echoes, though no snake is there. The artifact thrums with a presence, a sentience that shouldn't exist. The walls seem to whisper in a language Elias doesn't know yet. Then comes the first lie. A colleague asks, "Is it genuine?" And Elias, without thinking, says, "No, just a fake." But the words taste wrong, metallic, and the colleague's face twists in sudden pain, clutching their throat as if strangled. By morning, the colleague is gone, and in their desk drawer, Elias finds a note, written in their own handwriting, that reads, "You should have left it buried." The curse has begun. The serpent's tongue has chosen its new vessel. The air in the ruins was thick with the scent of damp earth and old stone, the kind of silence that presses against the ears like a weight. Dr. Lillian Graves knelt in the flickering torchlight, her fingers brushing away centuries of dust from the altar's hidden compartment. The locals had warned her not to come here. This temple was not just forgotten, they said, but forbidden. The carvings on the walls coiled like serpents, their gemstone eyes glinting as if watching her every move. Then she found it. Nestled in the hollow of the stone lay a relic wrapped in brittle yellowed parchment. As she peeled back the layers, the thing inside seemed to pulse. A grotesque, mummified tongue, blackened with age, split at the tip like a viper's fork. The moment her skin met its surface, a jolt shot through her, cold and electric, and the torchlight dimmed as though something had inhaled the flame. A whisper slithered through the air, no, not through the air inside her skull. A voice that was not a voice, hissing in a language she had never learned but somehow understood. "You have been chosen." Then, the first test. Her guide, a young man from the village who had reluctantly led her here, stepped closer. "What is it?" he asked, his voice trembling. Lillian opened her mouth to say, "Nothing, just a bone," but the lie curdled on her lips. Instead, what came out was, "The key to everything." The guide's eyes widened in horror, not at her words, but at his own hands. His fingers were blackening, the skin splitting like dried parchment, creeping up his arms as if something were unraveling him from the inside. He screamed, a sound that choked off into a wet gurgle, before collapsing, his body withering like a desiccated corpse in seconds. Lillian stumbled back, her breath ragged, but the relic was no longer in her hands. It was in her mouth. She gagged, clawing at her tongue, but it was too late. The taste of venom filled her throat, and when she looked up, her reflection in a broken shard of pottery showed not her own eyes, but the vertical slits of a serpent's gaze staring back. And then, the whispering began again, this time from her own voice. "Now we speak as one." The morning after unearthing the relic, Lillian wakes with a mouth full of ashes. Her tongue feels foreign, thick and heavy, like a serpent coiled behind her teeth. The taste of copper lingers, though her lips are unbroken. When she stumbles to the cracked mirror above the wash basin, Her reflection wavers for a moment, as if something beneath her skin is adjusting its grip. Then the whispers start. Not from the shadows, not from the walls. From inside her skull, a voice like dry scales sliding over stone. "Say it," the voice murmurs. "Say the words." She clamps her hands over her ears, but the sound doesn't fade. It curls around her thoughts, patient, amused. Breakfast is a pantomime of normalcy. Her colleague, Professor Hale, drones on about excavation permits, oblivious to the way Lillian's fingers tremble around her coffee cup. When he asks if she's feeling well, she forces a smile. "Just a headache," she lies. The moment the words leave her lips, Hale's nose begins to bleed. A thin, steady trickle that drips onto his papers. He frowns, dabbing at it with a handkerchief, but the flow doesn't stop. Within minutes, his skin turns sallow, his veins rising black beneath the surface like ink spreading in water. By the time the medics arrive, he's convulsing, his eyes rolling back to show only white. Lillian flees, but the voice follows. "You see?" It purrs. No need for knives, no need for poison, just words. That night, she dreams of a temple older than time. A faceless priestess kneels before an altar, her mouth sewn shut with golden thread. When she turns, her lips part, the stitches snapping one by one, and what pours out is not a scream, but a swarm of serpents, their bodies knotted into syllables. Lillian wakes with a gasp, her own mouth burning. In the mirror, her tongue is forked. The dreams grow worse. Lillian no longer sleeps. She descends. Each night, the temple in her mind becomes more real, its obsidian pillars stretching higher, its altar slick with something dark and glistening. The faceless priestess is always there, her stitched mouth weeping thin trails of blood, her hands outstretched in warning or supplication. Lillian can never tell. But tonight is different. Tonight, the priestess is gone. In her place, coiled around the altar, is it, the serpent. Not a snake, not truly. Something older, something that wears the shape of a serpent the way a man might wear a coat, its scales shifting between black and gold, and a color that hurts her eyes to look upon. Its voice is the one she's heard whispering in her skull. But here, in this place that is and isn't a dream, it shakes her bones like thunder. "You fight me," it says, not as an accusation, but with amusement. "Why? You could be glorious." Lillian tries to step back, but the dream holds her fast. The serpent's tail lashes, and suddenly she's kneeling before the altar, her hands pressed to the stone. It's wet. When she pulls them away, her fingers drip red. "All you need do is speak," the serpent murmurs, leaning down until its snout brushes her forehead. "One word, one name, and I will give you the power to shape the world as you please." She knows what it wants. It's been patient, letting her flail against the curse, letting her see the carnage her lies can unleash. Now, it offers control, a way to wield the curse instead of suffering it. And the worst part? She's tempted. Hale's face flashes in her mind, his veins blackening, his breath rattling, but beneath the guilt, there's a spark of something hotter, darker. What if he deserved it? The thought isn't hers. Or maybe it is. Maybe the serpent has simply peeled back the layers of her own heart to show her what's always been there. "Who hurt you, Lillian?" the serpent whispers. "Say their name. Let me make them bleed." Her lips part. A name rises in her throat. She wakes with a gasp, her sheets tangled around her, her mouth aching as if she's been screaming. On her pillow, a single black scale glints in the dawn light. The world begins to rot at the edges, and Lillian isn't sure if it's the curse or her own unraveling mind. It starts with the flies. They cluster around her, not the fat, lazy insects of summer, but small black things that move in unnatural unison, their buzzing forming words just beneath comprehension. They gather in the corners of her room, cling to her hair like living veils, yet no one else seems to notice them. When she lifts a shaking hand to swat them away, they dissolve into ash, only to reappear moments later, thicker this time, their drones sinking into her teeth like a vibration. Then come the reflections. Mirrors no longer show her true face. Sometimes her pupils are slitted, her tongue flickering between human and serpentine. Other times, her reflection simply isn't there, just an empty room where she should be, as though the curse has already eaten her from the inside out. Once, in a moment of sleep-deprived delirium, she sees the priestess from her dreams staring back, her stitched mouth twitching as if trying to speak. But the worst is the silence. The serpent's voice has gone quiet. For days, it doesn't whisper, doesn't taunt, as if it's waiting. The absence is worse than the torment. It feels like the hush before a predator strikes. Then, in the dead of night, she hears it. A dry, rustling sound from the walls of her apartment. She presses her ear to the plaster and recoils. Something is moving inside, slithering through the hollows, scraping against the bones of the building. The next morning, her neighbor's cat is found stiff and cold, its body coiled into a perfect spiral, its mouth stretched wide in a soundless scream. When she closes her eyes, she sees the temple again. But now, she's the one kneeling at the altar, and the needle, threaded with gold, is in her hand. Lillian stands before the altar, not in a dream this time, but in the flesh, her bare feet pressing against the cold stone of the forgotten temple. The air is thick with the scent of burnt offerings and something older, something metallic and primal that coats her tongue. The serpent is here too, no longer a whisper in her mind, but a physical presence, its massive coils draped over the crumbling pillars, its golden eyes reflecting the torchlight like molten coins. She had tried to run. She had tried silence, locking herself away, stitching her own lips shut with trembling hands, but the curse does not care for refusal. It had slithered through the cracks of her resistance, whispering through the mouths of others, twisting her every attempt at escape into another step toward this moment. "You were always meant to be here," the serpent hisses, its voice vibrating through the stone beneath her. "You were chosen." Lillian's hands shake as she clutches the needle, the same one from her visions, its golden thread glinting in the dim light. The priestess's fate had been a warning, but also an invitation. Silence is the only way to break the cycle. But the serpent smiles, bearing fangs that drip with venom. "You could rule instead," it offers. "No more weakness, no more fear, just power." And for a moment, she hesitates. She thinks of all the people who had wronged her, all the lies she had been forced to swallow. The curse had shown her what her words could do, how they could unravel lives, rewrite truths. The temptation is a living thing, coiled tight in her chest. But then she remembers the neighbor's cat, twisted into a grotesque spiral, the way Hale's veins had blackened, the priestess's hollow eyes. This is not power. It is predation. With a scream that tears at her throat, Lillian drives the needle into her own tongue. The pain is blinding, white-hot, but she does not stop. She sews her mouth shut with jagged, desperate stitches, the golden thread pulling tight, sealing away the curse's voice and her own. The serpent roars, its body thrashing, the temple shaking as its power is severed. The walls crack, dust raining down as the ancient magic unravels. When the dust settles, the serpent is gone, and Lillian is alone, her lips sealed forever, her silence the only victory left to claim. The world moves on, but Lillian does not. She wanders the edges of civilization, a ghost in tattered clothing, her face hidden behind a veil. The golden stitches across her mouth have fused into scars, the flesh around them puckered and strange, too smooth, almost scaled. She cannot speak, cannot scream, but the curse has left its mark in other ways. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she presses her hands to her throat and feels something move beneath her skin. The villagers whisper about her. Some say she's a saint, a woman who sacrificed her voice to save them from an ancient evil. Others claim she's the evil itself, a hollow thing wearing human skin, waiting to hatch. They leave offerings at her doorstep, bundles of herbs, bowls of milk, small knives, as if they can't decide whether to worship her or slit her throat. She accepts none of it. In her dreams, the temple still stands. The serpent is gone, but the altar remains, slick with something dark and glistening. The priestess is there too, her stitched mouth now undone, her lips parted in a silent scream, or maybe a warning. One morning, a child finds Lillian kneeling in the dirt, her hands pressed to the earth. The girl reaches out, curious, and Lillian flinches away, but not before the child sees it. The flicker of a forked tongue behind her sealed lips. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.